Now we'd like to transition to our actual programming. So our speakers, Heath, James, and Frank. I am your moderator for today. I always ask the easy questions, and then our audience gets to ask the hard questions. I will call on the first speaker and then indicate who will be the second, and then I'm hoping you guys can figure out who will be the third. After that, I'll rotate through, and you have about 2 to 3 minutes to answer the questions. So let's get started. All right, so recognizing the many challenges and opportunities to promote economic growth in our communities, what has worked in your respective communities, and what are some lessons learned? And we'll start with James on that one.
So, I'm going to speak to some of my experience in other places as well. I think economic development is really a team sport. There's so many complexities that go into this to making a project successful. What I've seen so far already in Pinal County is that there is excellent teamwork between the various municipalities, the county, the power providers. These projects seem to get more and more complex in terms of the amount of power they need, the infrastructure. Pinal County is still a vast area with a lot of open space, and the need to bring infrastructure to these sites is a critical factor. And so what I've seen so far is that teamwork that's so necessary. And so we have a board of supervisors that is definitely working towards bringing these projects and is very aggressive, a county manager that's very aggressive. And then you can just see in some of the communities a real willingness to work these things through. We also have some developers that are very aggressive as well, and really are working hard to bring these projects, which is always a huge help when you've got the developers, the brokers that are also kind of pulling in your direction. So all of those things working together, I think, are important to make these projects successful.
And Frank, do you need me to repeat the question?
Oh, I got it. Thanks. So I'll echo what James said in the spirit of collaboration. And for such a small county, Santa Cruz County, it's critical for us to have networks and continually be building those networks and looking for collaborative efforts. I'll go ahead and just address the elephant in the room that we're probably all kind of working through, the COVID-19 stuff. One of the strategies that we implemented was an economic recovery survey, and essentially developed a strategy in 2020 with the goal of trying to understand industry sectors in our county that were impacted by COVID and strategies ahead for sustainable development, essentially. Since we've been working on a range of projects, following kind of these areas, essentially looking at tourism in terms of nature, history, creative arts, wine and food industry tourism, employment pipelines and technical education, housing and redevelopment and reinvestment, strengthening our existing business community, and cross collaboration opportunities for innovation. And just, another couple of things that we've been doing since the pandemic, and a little bit before that as well, as we've been working on, land use incentives through the form of creation of overlay districts and master planning, and identifying areas of need for affordable housing. And lastly, essentially just, as I mentioned, create a network approach to economic development, which is essential to our small county.
Great, thank you. I like both of those, in terms of collaboration and economic development being a team sport, as well as putting in the groundwork for planning for what's coming next. And we'll get to some of that in a little bit. So Heath, with your vast knowledge of your 26 hours on the job, do tell us all,
Well, I will say this. Obviously, we all have a ton of challenges that we would face in regular times. And, now with COVID and everything, you've got supply chain disruption and all these crazy things with international trade happening. And so it's just compounding those issues, right? And so to kind of piggyback on what James and Frank said, the collaborative effort, I think, is going to be key, and it's going to continue to be key. I went from a small community in Marana, and now I'm at a regional community, if you will. And so the name of the game is collaboration for us. And I've actually been able to witness a lot of that collaboration and seeing what John Moffett had done before me, So some of the things that we've worked or that have worked for us is, and James mentioned it, is having a supportive board of supervisors. There can be disagreements and things like that, but for the most part, I think we're all kind of rowing in the same direction, which is key. And there's a lot of, political jockeying for those types of things to create that support. So Chuck Huckleberry has been great. Jan Lesher has been great. Carmine has been great in kind of moving all of those things forward in a concerted vision. I think we've also done a really great job at infrastructure development to make these site areas ready for these larger projects that are coming through that we're seeing from the ACA. We've been very fortunate to also be good with our land use and our planning and our zoning and holding on to these areas and making sure that they're developing in the way that we've preserved them for. So that's something that I think has been a key success. And then specifically some investments in our department. For a while it was Dr. Moffett and it was Patrick Kavanaugh, a team of two for a county of 1 million people. That seems huge. So, we've added me and we've added Kelly Maslin to do some strategic work as well. So the department is expanding. And I think with that, we'll be able to broaden our horizons and kind of address a few things that we haven't been able to do in the past. So gotta go back to the collaboration aspect of it, and also talk about what our developers do, what we can do for small and medium-sized businesses and all that kind of stuff. So I think we're on the right track right now.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to ask you to pick up your crystal ball and think about, where your counties are at now and what you want to accomplish and the things that you might see happening in the next 5 years. And in answering that question in terms of what's going to happen in the next 5 years, what are some of the challenges that you think might come up? And also, what might be some mitigating strategies in and around facing those challenges? And we'll start with Frank on that one.
So, Santa Cruz County it's a good question, because we're in the process right now of working on the development of an economic development strategic plan, which essentially would be trying to reframe some of their traditional sectors for economic growth. We're looking, ultimately we're putting together an RFP that will target sort of some of these items that I'm about to mention will be targeted in that RFP, which is things like mitigating climate change. Ultimately, we're trying to consider and whether or not it'll be feasible to develop a multimodal facility to help take truck traffic off the road, promoting automation in terms of logistics innovation for mining, produce industries, and the binational brokerage industries, expanding enhanced binational trade with Mexico, promoting nature-based economic opportunities, and then supporting entrepreneurship and small business. So I mentioned kind of this idea of an inland port. That's something that the county wants to explore as it's working with South 32 in the development of the Hermosa mine in Patagonia. So it's a means of enhancing essentially our local opportunities and supporting employment and, for produce, logistics, and mining. And then obviously, as I just mentioned, there's a huge industry there with the mine. We aren't totally clear on the impacts. Obviously, we know that there are going to be environmental impacts associated with mining, but we're still waiting to get the full report on their pre-feasibility study. But we're exploring good neighbor agreements, essentially as a means of framing what the community wants, and in the face of uncertainty, and looking towards mitigation and making sure that we develop a secure and sound public process as we move forward with them.
I like that, the proactive approach to a good neighbor agreement in terms of mining activities. It's always a challenge to kind of navigate, but kudos to you guys for working on that proactively. So
Thanks.
next I will go with Heath.
So I think we're all going to have, I think, somewhat similar challenges, but some unique ones for us too. I think in the next, 5 years, we're going to see a lot of what we're seeing now and some other emerging issues. But obviously, the workforce development component is going to continue to be a key issue that we're going to have to work through. The cross-training element is going to be very, very important. And something that's always stuck with me was something that Ian Rourke said from Pima Community College, and building a lattice, not a ladder type approach to it. So I feel like that's going to be something, the workplace adaptation and benefits for individuals to continue to hire those that are qualified. So once they're educated, what can that organization do to keep them, to attract them, and have them come work for their company? I think overall, a lot of infrastructure development and redevelopment and modernization is going to be required over the next 5 years as well. We have a lot of failing systems, especially when it comes to water resources and wastewater in some areas. And those are going to be key factors that help us continue to maintain what we have and to attract new and diverse employees in employment centers. And then I think lastly, natural resources, the use of water in general in a desert like Arizona is obviously of paramount importance now, and it's only going to get more important as time continues to move forward. So how do we mitigate these things? With a lot of pre-planning and with a certain amount of what our crystal ball sees, but anticipation. So we want to see what these new industry shifts are going to look like for us so that we can continue to train people that are coming into these new industries, identify what the industries are now and what their needs are, and make sure that we're providing that as well. As far as infrastructure goes, in fact, in an hour, I have an infrastructure meeting from here at the county to talk about where we want to put some new critical infrastructure in and some other not so critical infrastructure in to help with economic development, attraction, and retention. And so you have to identify where those key areas are going to be and identify the deliberate areas where you want to grow to make sure that you're growing in a way that makes sense for your community. And then again, the continuous workforce development element and the water resources, lobbying up at the state capitol, to help make sure that we're preserving that resource and we're utilizing it appropriately, and making sure that we're attracting industries that make sense for the amount of that resource that we have. So I think there's a big combination of state, federal, and local efforts that we can do to address all 5 of these, I think 4 issues that I talked about.
Yeah, that tension between economic growth and water use, particularly when you see the industries that are interested in our region and have been interested in the Phoenix area, right? Semiconductors use a lot of water. That's a little bit of a tension that we have to address as a community. So James, take it away.
Yeah, first I'd like to just add to my first answer. I was remiss in not mentioning the ACA and the partnerships, and Jamie's on, and I know he does a great job. And so I know Heath mentioned them, and so I want to just give a shout out to the ACA as well. So I hate that this is being recorded, because that means like in 5 years, you guys could show this to me and I'll probably be totally wrong. But some of the things that I see happening, certainly there's very few large sites in Maricopa County anymore that can do large industrial projects. So I do see a move more to Pinal County, with it, assuming the housing market stays fairly hot. I think we're going to see hundreds of thousands of more residents in Pinal County, which is great in terms of recruiting businesses. But to Heath's point, we're going to have to make sure that these people are ready for the jobs of the future. So definitely need to continue the partnerships that are in place with CAC, Central Arizona College, and the like. But I definitely see that we will have a lot more residents in the future. You can just see it already. I know Janine's already seen some things in Apache Junction. I know there's a lot in Casa Grande, and I know the Santan Valley area continues to explode. So, I think it really is beneficial in terms of these people are going to want a quality of life where they can work close to home. Right now, I think it's, we're still in a COVID world. Not everybody's going to the office anymore, but even still, you can just see the traffic. And I think from a quality of life standpoint, these people are going to want to work closer to home. They're going to want want those couple of hours back in their day. So I think that bodes well for Pinal County for in terms of the number of residents in the workforce for the future.
Well, James, I have to say, and thank you so much for the great idea. We are definitely going to play the high reels from all these recorded webinars and definitely
Yeah.
hold everybody's feet to the fire. So
Great.
moving on to the next question, a skilled workforce, and I know you guys have all touched on this, but just to drive home the point, right, is the number one reason a business will choose to locate in a community. In a world where every person and every place are in competition, how have you modified or enhanced your workforce development strategies to remain competitive? And we'll start with Heath. I'm sorry, Heath, but that's just how it's going to roll this time.
No, you're totally fine. And the great thing about this one is I kind of have an out. So I didn't get to do a ton of workforce development while I was working for Marana. There were little snippets here and there, right? To the question specifically, I think being at Pima County now, I don't see it as necessarily a competition. As a county, if we're engaged in workforce development, we're creating workforce for Marana, Oro Valley, Sahuarita, and the city of Tucson. So that internal competition or regional competition doesn't really exist when it comes to this, because we're training the people that are here, that are coming here to work here in any of these municipalities. So I think that is kind of something that is nice about that. The competition aspect doesn't necessarily have to be there. Again, as far as the workforce development components, from what I understand that Pima County has done, it's a lot, and it's both on a small and a large scale. And obviously there's a lot of collaboration that goes along with it. I know Pima Community College, again, has been a wonderful partner in identifying what the industries are for workforce development, and then actually creating these programs and putting students through. I know aviation related technology and training has become an issue for Pima County. And so working with them to shore up the existing demand that we have is going to be something that's key for us. And I know recently that Pima County also received a $4 million H-1B grant that can be used for workforce development for things like cybersecurity and automation and manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. And that'll consist of multiple partners utilizing this money. So effectively working together to identify how that money can be allocated and figuring out the most appropriate training resources to take advantage of to put people in these skilled labor positions. So that's my answer right now, and I'm sticking to it.
Sounds good. And I agree that in Pima County, and I would say in all of Southern Arizona, there's a lot of collaboration around workforce development. And my comment about competition was more about the entire world is now our competition in terms of attracting workers in the face of remote work. So James, when you're thinking about that in that context, how does that align with your strategies for workforce attraction or enhancement?
Yeah, so I came into excuse me, I apologize for my voice. I came into what I think is one of the great partnerships that I've heard of in Arizona, which is the partnership with the ACA, CAC, the communities involved, and Lucid to train their workforce right at the CAC campus, so that these people are working on the same equipment they would work on in the factory. They're building, they're doing their portion of that work right there in this laboratory classroom, so to speak. And when they hit the ground running on day one, they're really ready to work. And so I think it's been a great collaboration. And it's one that we really see being replicated as Lucid maybe ramps up to full employment. When they've got their workforce, that facility could maybe be reused for another employer of a similar nature, of a manufacturing nature. So we really want to do that and be a part of that. I think it's one of the most innovative programs that I've heard of in Arizona. And it really just benefits everyone by partnering in this. We're enhancing the skills of our residents, which increases their incomes. It also increases the likelihood that some other similar industries or companies could come in. And then also these folks have skills that they may come up with their own idea and spin off and create companies. So it really is beneficial to everyone. And so it's important going forward for our residents to be well trained. And I think the county and the communities involved, and again, the ACA being a part of that, really has recognized that it is critical, as you said, Camila, to competing internationally even for these companies.
Great, thank you. And Frank, how about Santa Cruz County?
Okay, so for Santa Cruz, Santa Cruz is pretty critical with respect to as I mentioned a few answers ago, I guess, binational import and export with Mexico. So one of the critical things that we've done is partner with our local community college, Cochise College, to develop some vocational programs and things that target like certifications and licenses like CDL and other things that young folks can start to participate in and get an understanding of the existing industry sectors of Santa Cruz County, and help develop those skills and help get them employed essentially. And then something else that we're looking forward essentially is identifying future industry sectors through our economic development strategic plan that we're working on. And then, obviously continuing the collaboration with our local educational partners and hoping to implement more of those strategies looking forward and speculative industry that folks can get involved in and skills that they can learn and develop. So, and then just some other things that are kind of, in response to user friendliness and accessibility with COVID and things like that, improving our Arizona workforce WIOA programs website, and then essentially employing a business specialist that can do community outreach to our local businesses to help them identify what their needs are after or I don't want to say after, right, because we're still kind of living through all this stuff, but as we're continuing to deal with some of the challenges of COVID-19 and the implications that it's had on our economy.
Great, thanks. It's a good transition to the next question, which is about the new normal in small businesses, right? And by new normal, I feel like every day it's a different set of cards, and we're all just trying to figure it out. So, settling into this new normal, how have each of your organizations pivoted to deliver services and assistance and value to small and medium-sized businesses within your communities? We'll start with Frank on that one.
Okay, so basically, for us, there's an opportunity with ARPA funds to inventory and support our small business ecosystem. We need to, understand what we have locally and regionally to strengthen entrepreneurs and small businesses. Our ARPA funds will essentially provide $1 million to forgivable loans that will address the needs of entrepreneurs and small businesses, that have poor credit or limited tax returns or limited collateral and language barriers. So that's, I think, like a huge thing for our county. And then another thing that we've done recently was we got a USDA small business development grant to support local businesses, ultimately to be used to develop youth internship programs for students to learn e-commerce skills, to offer a coordinated online presence and digital platform for independent businesses, and develop economic development strategies to assist small businesses. Local independent, essentially local independent businesses are critical to our economy, and we wanted to help kind of get their voice out there and make sure that despite all the the challenges pre-pandemic and currently, that they're able to stay afloat with such a shifting economic landscape.
That's great that you guys have been able to already kind of capitalize on those funding opportunities that were made available during kind of the height of the pandemic. So we'll go on with James and then Heath.
Yeah, so it's really, I feel like it's still business as usual in economic development. So it never really slowed down. We had to spend so much time trying to help our businesses stay in business during the pandemic. And then coming out of that, there's been such a transition and such, especially in Pinal County with the supply chain issues, companies wanting to bring that closer onshore or closer to their customers. The problems that California seems to continue to have, and the thought that California companies might be able to operate more efficiently in Arizona. So I feel like in many ways it's business as usual with some impediments like not being able to meet in person, but we've still got to continue to respond quickly and continue to serve these companies that are looking to come to Arizona with an even larger pipeline. Our workforce folks are certainly busy trying to help companies now, where we were trying to help them stay in business. Now we're trying to help them get employees to stay in business. So, I feel like it's in many ways it is business as usual, enhanced with some impediments to doing business the way we used to, if that makes sense.
And Heath?
I think much the same to James, honestly. I mean, we're dealing with some of the similar things that we've seen over the course of however many years. And I think it's just being able to pivot and identify what they need and how to get them there. But, during the pandemic and I guess helping existing, small, medium businesses within the community, there are a lot of different things you can do. And I know that there have been some significant things that Dr. Moffitt did and that Patrick did. And that was, it was working with our partners, our regional partners all over the place to do a lot of different things. So one of the first things was, I know that we continuously steer people to utilize and take advantage of programs that are created up at the state level through the ACA. I think those have been very helpful to a lot of people, and it provides additional opportunity for them to survive basically during the pandemic. To that point, the county, just like a lot of the surrounding areas did, created programs that were, grant opportunities or, low percentage reimbursements for, things like rent and utilities and all those types of things. And so we did that here as well, again, to help bridge the gap during everything that was going on and everything that still continues to go on. We did, creative things like expanding the different interpretations of some zoning to allow for additional outdoor use and things like that, the relaxed zoning and whatnot. You've seen that throughout the entire county, actually. And then we've also really started focusing on identifying additional grant opportunities that we might be able to provide from a longer term perspective to help these small and medium businesses address the specific needs that they have. Part of identifying or addressing those specific needs is working with our regional partners to understand what those needs are, obviously, but I think that's something that we're going to continue to do. And then the other thing, and I think this is going to be important, and this goes with the whole collaborative theme, is to continue to work with regional partners at the city of Tucson and Marana, Oro Valley, and Sahuarita to identify the things that we can do to complement existing programs that they may or may not have. I think if we do that, we create a better ecosystem to more sustainably assist, those smaller and medium-sized businesses. And if we can do things, if we can kind of jump off of things that are being already done, will only help those businesses in those areas that much more, because my understanding is that those areas know what those businesses needs and they know what they need to function. So that's kind of where we're at right now at the county.
Great, thank you. So in the spirit of pivoting and doing things off the cuff, so I'm going to go ahead and forego my last question because we only have about 12 minutes left. And I want to give everybody in the room an opportunity to ask questions of our speakers. Before we go and do that, I do want to give a shout out to Mortensen and Chase for being a sponsor for this event. We really appreciate it. I'm also going to give a shout out to myself because we also sponsored this event. Anyway, I just want to say that I really appreciate all of you kind of honing in on, I think, the true essence of economic development, which is really that collaborative piece that we all work toward, and the strategic component of economic development where you bring in the partners. You don't necessarily have to have all the answers, but you do need to know who to talk to and who to bring to the table. And I think you guys have all demonstrated that spectacularly. So right now, I will go ahead and open it up to the audience for all the hard questions. And if nobody asks one, I will ask mine. And feel free to just take yourself off mute and go ahead. Such a shy bunch.
That's it. We're done, Camila. Wrap it up.
Nope, not done, not done. All right, so since
Well, I'll
everybody,
ask a quick question. You
Thank
said
you,
12
Tom.
minutes, but this was posted to be 11:30 to 1. Is that not the case?
no, we, when we switched it to virtual, there was an adjustment in the time schedule that was noted in the email. It's until 12:30.
Okay, thank you. I missed that. Thank you.
All right, well, I will ask my question then. So looking at the federal funding opportunities that might be coming our way, deluge of opportunities that we'll all be looking at, what are some of the priorities that your respective counties are going to be looking at? And even better, and in the spirit of collaboration, how can the people in this virtual room help you accomplish those objectives? We'll start with Mr. Smith.
So, excuse me. Some of the things that are being discussed at the federal level, I think all fit nicely with the things that are happening in Pinal County. Obviously, there's a move towards further use of electric vehicles. We have a number of solar, obviously Lucid in place, Nikola also. And so this move towards electric vehicles and having this workforce that's trained, I think is going to be beneficial. Solar is certainly a big one in Pinal County, and there's definitely a movement towards more solar. Addressing the supply chain issues again, Pinal County being at the center of I-10, I-8, the rail access that's there, I think makes us a great candidate to get additional economic development projects. Affordable housing is addressed in the Build Back Better plan. I think that's certainly going to be something we're going to need in the Valley as housing prices continue to rise. And then, the infrastructure bill, I think passenger rail is certainly something that will benefit all of us. Being able to better connect Phoenix and Tucson and through Pinal County, I think will help all of us. It's interesting, we hear from Lucid that they have people coming an hour from Maricopa County or an hour from the Tucson area to work. And, is there a possibility that those folks can get closer, it can expand the workforce they pull from? I think that would be great, certainly for Pinal County. And then any money towards roadways. I was really encouraged by the governor's budget that will expand I-10. I think, any improvements we can make to the roads through Pinal County that connect us to the rest of the world. California and Texas are two of the top 10 economies in the world. We are right at the center of that. And I think this provides a ton of opportunity, but we need to make sure that our roads keep up with the demand. So just some of the things that are out there that are on our radar.
Great. And we'll go to Frank and then Heath.
Okay, yeah, and just to echo a little bit of what James said, affordable housing, with the housing prices increasing all throughout Arizona, I think it's critical to focus on affordable housing as a strategy moving forward. And then another thing, we need to focus on as well down in Santa Cruz is aligning our capital projects with our existing industry sectors and ensuring that, we have the infrastructure to support their needs. A lot of that current need will be defined through our economic development strategic plan as well. And then some of the speculative needs as well, some of the things that we'd like to target and incentivize in terms of, exploring regional transit opportunities, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier as well. So.
And Heath?
I think, whether it's ARPA funding or the Build Back Better bill or whatever's coming through, it's going to be very similar to what James and Frank are saying. The infrastructure development and modernization is going to be key for all of us, I think. I think that goes without saying, to be perfectly honest. And again, that kind of touches on specific infrastructure types for water and wastewater, which is again going to continue to be a big issue, I think, from a resource standpoint for Pima County and really for the entire state. I know that a lot of that money hopefully can be used, for workforce development efforts, continued training, and some like modernization of maybe the Pima County one-stop system and enhancements to that to make sure that we're, kind of pivoting and advancing and evolving just as much as the workforce around us is, which I think is going to be key. I think aside from that, the creation of some additional grant programs to help some of that stuff along the way. But I think really the biggest thing, and it's the end of the question, is, how can people in this room help? And that is to continue to be the best partners that you guys have been when working together. Every little bit helps, I think, one way or the other, whether you're dealing with Arizona Commerce Authority or, we get to deal with Sun Corridor, or our Pima County Workforce Investment Board, or the community colleges. All of that information, it's so much, but it lends itself to figuring out exactly what needs that are there and who those needs are going to benefit, And so as long as we have these people, these players that are, specializing in their certain areas, and we can kind of act as a clearinghouse for a movement of a regional strategy or something like that, it's going to be immensely beneficial for everybody. So to that, I just say, let's keep playing well in the sandbox together so that we can make some of these dreams a reality and make sure that we're focusing on what is coming down the pipeline in the future. And Frank, I think, mentioned something about them doing an economic development strategic plan. We're actually going to start doing our 2022 economic development strategic plan update as well. So hopefully everything I just said, the confluence of it will be a comprehensive and coherent strategic plan that takes advantage of all of these partners and everything. So.
Strategic plans for everyone, and then action plans to implement them. So I always feel like I have to put that in there because, there's only so much planning you can do without actually doing anything. But I think everybody, each of the speakers, they touched on kind of like that affordability piece, right? Affordability of housing, affordability of doing business. And maybe we are, it's our own success that's led us to this point where, the affordability piece has become more of a tip of the spear topic of conversation. And I think whatever it is that we can collectively do to address the issue of affordability, if it's, any policies that are associated with such, or even in terms of improving or increasing the average wage within our respective communities so that the communities kind of grow along with the costs as opposed to the other way around. But before I close this out, I just want to check and see if anybody else has any additional questions for our speakers. If not, I have one more.
Camila, I have one maybe. I hear a lot of conversation about some of these different things potentially coming through the federal government, right? Whether it's Build Back Better, CHIPS, et cetera. How at risk is this wave of collapsing if those things don't go through, maybe from our partners? And I'll leave it there.
Great question. Who wants to start that one? James was the first to take himself off mute, so tag you're it.
Not that I necessarily wanted to answer it the most. It seems like there's so much pent up demand, Chase. I don't know. I don't want to be the one to say that these projects can't go forward, but I feel like there's so much demand and so much desire to have more predictability in the supply chain and predictability with political situations that I feel like a lot of these projects are still going to go through. Not that that legislation wouldn't help, but right now I just feel like there's such demand for products and there's so much money in the market that a lot of these things are going to go forward either way. But that's just my opinion.
Heath or Frank, you want to tackle that question?
I mean, I would say I agree. I don't think there's any fear of an entire collapse of this pipeline happening simply because we don't get federal funding. I think all of our, our counties have done a really great job in planning a lot of these things, whether it's, strategic infrastructure development and all that kind of stuff. I think the bottom line is that because there is so much demand, like James said, and there is a lot of money in the market, if we didn't get this money, I think it would just slow down how many projects can come to fruition. But I really, truly don't think it's all just going to hit this dead stop and there is any type of collapse. That's just my 2 cents on that.
The one thing that I see as an issue to all of this pent up demand, right, is indeed that supply chain issue. Because I think even if the federal funding comes to bear, we're all going to be faced with such supply chain issues because our projects are all going to be late. They're all going to be over budget because of such. And so I think that's also something that we collectively as a Southern Arizona community could probably start working toward. We have 1 more minute, and I do want to make a pitch for our event that is coming up next, which is March 16th. We're doing equity and economic development, which dovetails well with the funding opportunities that we just kind of finished talking about. But most of all, I want to say thank you so much to all of our speakers. You guys did a fantastic job. I really appreciate it. Yes, Zoom clapping for all. And Heath, good luck on your second day. James, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us. And Frank, you as well. It's been fantastic. And if anybody has any questions or burning desire questions that they have for our speakers, feel free to email them to myself or to Carrie. We'll send around their contact information if no one. So
Thank you, everyone.
enjoy and have a great day. Thank you, everybody.